Before we go into our interview today, I wanted to let everyone know we have a new sponsor for our Energy Question podcast, the U.S. Oil and Gas Association, or USOGA for short. First established in 1917, USOGA has been an effective and creative voice for the industry for more than a century now. USOGA is dedicated to educating the public, policymakers, and legislators at the federal, state, and local levels about the value of the domestic oil and natural gas industry. If you're in the industry and not currently a USOGA member, please consider joining the association as a way of helping it tell your story to the policymakers whose actions impact everything you do each and every day. You can start that process by contacting USOGA through its website, usoga.org. Thanks so much to USOGA for sponsoring the Energy Question podcast. And now on with our show. Hey, welcome to the Energy Question with David Blackmon. I'm your host, David Blackmon, and with me today are two very special guests, Greg Trostel, Industry Development Manager for Rockwell Systems, and Matt Mohajer, Digital Program Manager with SLB. Gentlemen, how are you today?
Very good. Thanks for having us.
Great, David. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here. Greg and Matt, for our viewers, are key managers in a partnership between four technology companies, Rockwell, SLB, Sensia, LLP, and Cognite, to develop digital solutions designed to help decarbonize FPSOs, or floating production storage and offloading facilities. And if you're not familiar with what those are, these are giant, highly complex floating facilities that play a major role in the development of offshore oil and gas resources all over the world, with the offshore provinces like West Africa, Guyana and Suriname, Brazil, and even the Gulf of Mexico in a growing boom status right now as the industry, tries to develop new resources to meet global demand, which keeps rising. The decarbonization of these big platforms it has become a higher priority. So these four companies are engaged in a consortium to collaborate to develop these solutions to improve the reliability, availability, safety, and efficiency of these critical assets. So guys, thank you again for being here. Let's get this discussion going. First, for Matt, let's talk about how this partnership came about, because we don't see this a lot, four different technology companies collaborating in this way on a major project like this. So did it take a long time to reach an agreement on how to move ahead with this project?
Thanks, David. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you just mentioned, FPSO market has been always a sizable market within the energy sector. But currently, this market is going through a lot, quite a bit of unprecedented expansion.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of, surge in the construction and also operation of this FPSO. And as you also know, this is a long-term commitment. Most of these FPSOs remain in operation for a few decades, and they play a major role in industry. Having said that, they're quite complex. They're very dynamic. So, it takes quite a few moving parts come together to make sure they work efficiently. So that was the reasoning behind forming this coalition across, as you mentioned, Sensia, Cognite, Rockwell, and SLB. And as you can also imagine, it takes a bit of time to make sure we are all aligned and committed to go forward. Everyone was so excited from day one, but it was probably a couple of years before the official announcement at OTC just past May in Houston. To give you a bit of a flavor of, what is this about and why these four companies, right? As Rockwell is known or synonymous with automation across many industries. And also they have quite a bit of extensive expertise in overall power system. Within the context of FPSO, they are the leading OEM module of automation. So they bring a lot of expertise across automation, but also specifically around FPSO. Sensia, which is actually a joint venture between SLB and Rockwell, was created specifically to unify the the concept of sensing, intelligence, and action within the oil and gas facilities. So, which, as you can imagine, there is a lot going on around obviously collecting more data, making our system smarter, and also taking action. So that's the contribution of Sensia to this coalition. Cognite, which is actually a partner with both SLB and Rockwell separately. So they are known for empowering companies with contextualization of the data, making sure the data is always available, trustworthy, and actually making sure it unites the engineering type of data, IT, and operation data into one system to make sure that actually the entire system works together. And lastly, and hopefully not the least, SLB brings the foundation of the production expertise, the know-how of the operation, and also we manufacture a lot of equipment that actually they go on the FPSO. And on the top of that, brings a bit of expertise from the subsurface, subsea, and making sure not only while we are focusing on the top side and the FPSO, but we take into account what's happening upstream of the FPSO. And overall, we are super excited to come together. As you mentioned, there are not a lot of examples like this in our industry, but I think we are very happy to be one of the very first few to make this happen. I think actually we do need more of this collaboration to make the industry a lot more efficient and actually make sure our customer perform to the maximum. I'll stop here.
Yeah, and so, yeah, I mean, throughout the whole energy space, you have these incredibly complex systems. So I agree with you. When I saw the announcement on this partnership, I thought, man, this is the kind of thing that's probably going to happen, more and more as time goes along in the energy space. So, Greg, I mean, obviously each company has its own, as we just heard from Matt, each area of expertise, and I was going to be focusing on specific aspects of this overall integration project. But is one company going to be taking the lead on the global integration?
Yeah, I think, Dave, the idea is that as we go through this digitalization evolution within the industry, we have to have the experiences and the expertise come from so many different directions to make sure that the systems are implemented correctly, that we get the right solution mix. The short answer to your question is it will depend on the situation as to which company of the coalition might take the lead for different phases of the project or different projects of their own. But ultimately, the plan is that we would use the resources and expertise from the entire coalition to get that done. And one of the interesting aspects of the coalition as well that I think is really important is that we talk about openness of the coalition a lot. And really there's kind of two main areas of openness that we mean. The first is that the coalition itself is not meant to be a static group of 4 companies, right? We would openly welcome the involvement of other companies and other folks that have expertise in different areas to join, and again, to kind of create that sense of a vision that we're bringing to life within an FPSO. A second meaning of openness is technically from within the architecture and automation itself, is that we want to advance and adopt and promote the open movement within automation so that there aren't these proprietary closed systems. You're not locked into a vendor or a supplier for the 25-year life of your vessel and you have to do whatever they tell you. No, it shouldn't be that way. It should be much more open. We should be able to communicate between systems a lot easier. And so I think that openness concept is important on both levels. And for us as a coalition, it's really all around, and especially when we're talking about digitalization, it's around the flow of data, the easy flow of data, the best use of that data. And so that's why companies like Sensia and Cognite are so important to the coalition, because they bring in that area of expertise, in addition, of course, to what SLB develops, what Rockwell develops. So that area of data is really, really important. But we're not at all promoting the idea of a data reconstruction project that takes years and thousands of hours, right? What we're talking about is the implementation of an architecture that allows for quick implementation of digital solutions, that we have a handle on the data pretty much immediately. We know what to do with it. If there are gaps, of course, that has to be addressed. But we're looking to make it easy and quick to adopt digital solutions, and really we're focused on kind of three main pillars for those solutions. It's around the project design and construction phase of a new vessel. It's around the operational life of the vessel itself. Matt mentioned 20, 25, 30 years of operation, and that applies for new projects as well as for the existing fleet. And then specifically around sustainability. What are the sustainability applications that are best promoted within an FPSO? And those sustainability pieces can apply both to the project and to the operation. So it's kind of, we've built everything kind of around those three pillars.
So Matt, I mean, you know what some people are going to ask, and you probably have been already asked this question since it's been a couple of months since you made the announcement of this project. We're talking about a big major project here that's focused on these efforts to try to lower emissions from a pretty discrete set. I mean, there's a lot of FPSOs around the world, but it's a pretty discrete subset of the overall picture. And, you know, just, you know, how big can the carbon footprint be from these facilities like this? So what do you say to people when they ask you, well, why such a big project focused on this aspect of the industry?
No, David, that's you're right. I mean, that's a very much asked question, very valid question. As Greg just mentioned, I mean, within the context of FPSO coalition, we are focusing on three pillars. One is on the project cycle, one is on operation, and one is the sustainability. And sustainability, which goes across the other two, right? There is a big underlay sub-project for carbon footprint emission. So if you zoom out, yes, the estimates are around, like, FPSO market probably is around 4% contribution toward the global upstream oil and gas emission. So it's a small percentage in that sense, but within this context, there is no a small percentage, right? So it's important to be tackled, and all the coalition parties are very committed to reduce or minimize this as much as possible. To the point, for some of the new ones, we are even discussing the options for no flaring at all. And there is a lot of new technology advances in how much work we can do remotely. So less travel, less footprint, leveraging the resources globally. So there is a lot more than just the carbon footprint, but carbon footprint is a very important part of this. And also, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, there is no small percentage in here, right? So any carbon footprint is big and needs to be dealt with, right? While I'm talking about this subject, and within the context of sustainability, right? Obviously, one is reducing our footprint. One is doing more remotely, which has also not only efficiency, but also notion of, reduction on the footprint. There is a lot. We are looking into the detail of water and chemical management aspect of this. So as you know, these vessels, they are in operation for a long time. They have access to a lot of water usage. Their requirement is water. So water management is a very important part of that. So we are looking into the detail of that. As I mentioned, flaring is also another pillar of this, which directly has an impact on the carbon footprint. Yeah. So, and as we go forward, I'm pretty sure there would be a lot more granularity on what is the sustainability within this context and what does it really mean for not only us within the partnership of this coalition, but also for customer and the industry as a whole.
Greg, it is, again, there's a limited number of these things, but is the fleet increasing? Has it been increasing in recent years? And do we think it'll continue in that direction going forward?
Yeah, our research, I think the industry research is showing that the FPSO market is really the hottest area oil and gas development right now, certainly offshore oil and gas
Yeah.
development. If you think about an existing fleet of upwards of 200 vessels that are active, some are always down for different time periods, but say roughly 200 active vessels. We've got at least 20, a little bit more than 20 projects that are in development right now, if we take a snapshot of where we are today. And the estimates are 30, 40, 50 new vessels by the end of the decade. So we're talking about,
Holy cow.
a 30% increase in the worldwide fleet, just from that little snapshot. And it kind of ties into what Matt was saying around emissions, is that, yeah, even if it's just 4% of the total, well, it's about to be more than that just because more vessels are coming online.
Yeah.
And what can we do to make the new vessels as clean and emission free as possible? And what can we do to retrofit the existing 200 to make them operate cleaner? And we get the question a lot too, Red. Why all the attention on oil and gas? I thought that industry is dying, right? Well,
Yeah,
I think from the
Doesn't
inside,
seem
we know
like
it's
it,
not
does
dying. That's right. It's definitely not dying, and we know we've got fossil fuels around for however many decades you want to argue. And so the point is still the same. If they're going to be around and they're part of the energy transition mix anyway, which of course they're going to be, then let's do our best to make them as clean as possible. So that's really what we're focused on.
Yeah, just as an aside for viewers, I interviewed the CEO of one of the big offshore drilling companies last week, and not for this podcast, but just a standard interview. And I mean, he said, "Look, we think we're going to be a growing business in 2050." So I mean, companies are not planning to be out of business in 10 years, I guess is the point of that.
Despite what you may read and hear, right?
Right. And just as a point of curiosity for my benefit, where are these things being built, right? Where are the facilities where these enormous pieces, I mean, these vessels are being built? Is it in Singapore, or, I mean, obviously they're probably not being built in the United States, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's very much a global industry, and I think you mentioned in the intro, there are certainly the hottest spots where they're being implemented, right, where the final destination is. And of course,
Yeah.
It's an FPSO, right? It doesn't have to be final destination. You can move it around if you want to. But the big spot, 40% of the market is Brazil. But then if you look outside of Brazil, we've seen significant interest and development in Guyana and Suriname in South America. You slide over and you look at the west coast of Africa, it's going to be certainly a very key area of development and expansion for FPSOs. Even the east side of Africa, depending on what they decide to do with the gas on that side. Asia Pacific's always been a pretty strong market, offshore Australia. And then you have little pieces of growth if you look at the North Sea and maybe even the North Atlantic. When it comes to building the vessels, dominated by the Asia Pacific region, you're looking at Singapore, Korea, China as the major construction zones, I guess, for these things. And of course, these days, we're talking about each asset now is upwards of $3 billion, right? These are not small projects. So
it's like building a new refinery almost.
It is.
Crazy.
Yep.
So one of the questions that occurs to me, Matt, is that, you're working on developing these solutions for this specific, part of the energy business, but I'm assuming a lot of the applications you guys are going to be working on in this project will have applicability to other industries and other parts of the business sector, right?
Absolutely, David. As we discussed so far, you can consider them like a floating facilities, right? So if you come with that mindset, there is a lot of solution workflows that are common that is applicable for any sort of topside facility. So to name a few, right? So for example, one of the key and probably hottest topic in our industry is asset performance management, how that's being paired with digital twin. and how that impacts not only the equipment health and reliability and availability, but also looking at the overall system and system optimization, overall throughput optimization. So from that sense, some of these process equipment that they go on the FPSO are very similar to the one that they are actually on land or on different type of topside facility. So once, from the OEM perspective, when we create, those algorithms to look into their equipment health and uptime, and they're very applicable across the industry within different type of the topside, for example. Another example is, remote operation. The concept of remote operation, and these days more and more autonomous operation, is been in our industry for decades, right? So there is a lot of remote operation centers being built, that they are centrally located, looking at different assets. And in this case, this FPSO could be seen as one that is being remotely not only operated, but actually interacted with, right? And there's a lot of requirement coming from our customers that there actually some of these new vessels or the vessel of future is no personnel on board, right? That is during the normal operating condition, no personnel on board, right? So that's very similar to a land facility or topside facility where we want to actually operate it externally. Having said that, there is a lot of things that is very unique to FPSO, and we are taking that in mind. There is a certain condition that needs to be met, and there is not always a secure connectivity. So there is a lot, in terms of the data transmission, etc. So yes, for most of us application that we are working, they're very applicable across the different type of topside. But at the same time, we are making sure they are very much addressing the needs of the FPSO and the challenges around FPSO. From design perspective, sustainability, and also operation.
So we've mentioned Brazil a couple of times here in this interview, and I know, Matt, that SLB was just awarded a contract with Petrobras, a very important contract with them as well. Talk about that.
Absolutely. I mean, we are so excited about this. This was announced late last year, or awarded late last year, announced early this year. This is a contract that actually we are working very closely with Petrobras to develop and implement a control system and a dynamic process simulation solution for them. This is very much around a multi-purpose dynamic simulation solution, which is very much in the collaboration with one of the key member of the coalition, which is Sensia / Rockwell. But also, we, as Greg mentioned, that our coalition is open for this specific requirement. We work very closely with another company called In Process and leveraging their expertise within this topic. Long story short, this is we are looking at how we are leveraging original equipment manufacturing, OEM expertise, and offshore know-how, pairing that with the digital twin and capability in terms of the operator training, simulation, and control that different party brings to this specific project, to form a kind of an immersive digital twin environment where we can look at the dynamical challenges of this overall FPSOs. We are quite excited about this opportunity, and the work is just started.
Man, there's so much going on. There's just so much. I can't keep up. I really can't. It's crazy. And we've talked about some of the high growth areas around the world for FPSOs, but I just wonder, are there other areas that we haven't talked about? I mean, we mentioned Brazil and the northern coast of South America, west coast of Africa.
Yeah, David, I think
where else?
part of the answer is in addition to kind of where the vessels are put into production and where they're built, it's such an international market, because if you think about where all of the production modules are built, that's really all over the world, including North America and Europe. If you look at the different key systems, whether it be automation or power or whatever the systems might be, again, those are kind of produced from from experts all over the world. So it does tend to be a very international business. And that's why, it's important to have companies involved in the coalition that have a lot of international reach. And we have, combined resources pretty much everywhere in the world to be able to work with any of the vendors, any of the suppliers, and kind of pull these global projects together. One of the important value proposition points that we bring as a coalition also is helping to standardize these projects. When you have suppliers from all over the world, it's really important to get everyone using the same hardware and software for their individual modules, because when these things are placed onto the top side of a vessel during the construction phase of the project, all these modules need to be able to talk to each other and to the main systems across the vessel. So we have a term for that that we call OEM MAC, or OEM Main Automation Contractor. And the idea there is that you have that consistency so that when you get to the yard, everything plugs and plays.
Yeah.
If you have to, the rule of thumb is, if it costs $1 to make a change in the engineering office, by the time you get to the field, it's going to cost $10. That same change, by the time you get to the implementation site, it's going to cost $100. So, do what you can early during the engineering phase of the project, get that consistency in place, so that it really helps keep the cost and the schedule down for the project, and it helps the startup. So international business, but you really need that consistency and standardization as well.
Well, gentlemen, this is just fascinating to me. We're running up against time, but before we close out, where can people go to find more information about this project? Just the websites for your companies, or is there a central project website that they could find online?
So David, we have a website that is slb.com/FPSO. That's the coalition website. So you'll see a majority of information there. Obviously, there is a link to all the partners of the coalition website there. So you can find the right link to Rockwell, Cognite, and also Sensia from there. There's also a series of recording that a lot of them is Greg and I. If the audience are not tired of us, they can go and watch some of those other recording there as well. But also there's other experts that across the different value chain of the FPSO, they are discussing some of these topics there. So probably that's a good starting point. And of course, myself and Greg are available to be contacted as needed.
Oh man, you shouldn't throw that out, boy. You might be getting calls. That's dangerous.
I accept most LinkedIn invitations.
Yeah, we will include their personal phone numbers in the show notes for this podcast. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. This has been great. I really look forward to following this project and the results you guys achieve. For companies like this can't help but have good results, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you very much, David.
Great to be on.
Thank you to our producer, Eric Perel, the Sandstone Group for hosting our podcast, and to the U.S. Oil and Gas Association for being our sponsor. I'm David Blackmon, and that is all for now.